Hi, welcome back. So we are at the section of dealing with pandas. In this section, we're going to just cover a number of features that makes things quite a bit more convenient while dealing with pandas. Now, essentially, you have to remember the two backbone of pandas based on series and data frames, as we have explained in the previous section. Now, basically, let me go ahead and use a new function that offered me to create kind of a data frame, panda.dateRange. This is the function. And basically, what it does, this function is require a first argument to decide on the period of days, say 2023, and then it decide the periods, how many months. For example, we're going to return the first 6 months. So if I would have to actually print this date, it would be a 6-month period on that particular year that we have decided on. I'm going to get back and create a data frame. A data frame function basically is require you to the first argument, where is the list. So in this case, I'm going to use actually the NumPy random. So it's going to create a matrix of random variables, 6 rows by 4 columns. Now, the index here, I'm going to indicate the indexes for the rows to be equal to the date. Then, in terms of the columns, going to be equal to maybe list of these value of A, B, C, and D. Now, the corresponding value would be as expected, these are the months of the days corresponding as we created before, and these are the columns, as you could see here. This is a alternative way of actually creating an object as a data frame. Now, beside that, we have seen also how to create it from dictionary, perhaps from number of series, etc. Now, let's go ahead and start to work on reviewing actually some of the data frame by pandas. Basically, if I would have to come to the data frame.head function just like that and print this, I will get back a result with the first number of heads, in this case first 5 values. Same thing, I would work with the tail actually just like that and getting the last values from end of that matrix. Now, basically, we can use something called the index of that data frame. So if I would have to print the index of this data frame, it would return all the indexes which actually corresponding to the months which we have created using the date range here. Same thing, if I would have to print the columns, I will get back with the index of all the A, B, C, and D. There is a very useful function, which is actually a major one once you deal with pandas to make some statistic analysis on your data set, that called describe. I will get back, for example, the count, the mean, the standard deviation, minimum, and then the quartile values. If you'd like somehow to transpose the matrix, we could use the T class variable. Maybe you need to do some kind of sorting for some purpose, so I could have sort expects you to pass the axes. Let's try to run this in ascending in terms of the columns. So 0 correspond to the rows and 1 corresponding to the columns. Maybe you could also assort by certain values. Sort this by values, column value, let's see by the B. So when you ran this, all the values have been ascended according to the B's value on that. If you'd like, for example, to select the data frame based on the A. So the returning value is going to be, as you can expect exactly. You could also select by slicing, for example, all the value from the 0 all the way to the third one. Also, you might want to select by certain labels. Well, you need to locate based on, for example, dates of 0. You get all the columns from A to D, and these are the corresponding values for each one of them where the date was 0. It means the first row. Also, you might want to select all the rows, and in terms of the columns, I would like just to get the A column, and maybe I'm gonna get the B column. So the result is to return back all the months, since I indicated all the rows, and in particular I'm selecting the A and the B columns. Also, you might, instead of all the rows, you can just precisely define on a certain month. So I expect only the returning, it should be the A and B of these values. So if I would have to run this, I will get back the result as expected to this particular date. Now you can also select by position. Position is going to use another function, we call it the I location, to select the third position, and you pass the integer, you will get all the columns selecting to the particular position you were talking about, which is actually the third row, in other words to say. Also, maybe be much more specific, only the values maybe from 3 to 5, and in terms of the column from 0 to 2. So in this case, you get the A and the B corresponding to this 0 to 2, and the third and the fifth corresponding to this period of months row-wise. Now, let's look at something called a setting as well. Setting a new column will automatically align the data by the indexing. For example, let's say I'm going to create S1 here, which is a Pandas series, and I'm going to add a new key or column, and I will say that's equal exactly to S1. Now, if you print this one, what you have done, you just appended the new period here that is just created. Now, how about dealing with missing data? Now, Pandas primarily use the value mp.nan to represent missing data. It is by default not included in the computations. Now, reindexing allow us to change, add, or delete the index on a specified axis, and this return a copy of the data. So, for example, I would have to define data frame 1. I want to locate every dates of 0, whereby dates of 1, in terms of the column, let me choose the E column, and I want to set all these into value of 1. So what do you expect to get back? The result, as the command is suggesting, that this is the 0 and the 1, and this is the column of E, and assign the value of 1 to them. Data frame can drop all the missing values. So basically, if I would have to come to df1 and use the drop non-values, now basically what it does, this one, it drops any row that have a missing value. So this is not something I could recommend once you do analysis. However, this is how Pandas deal with it. You could also fill in missing values. For example, if I would have to fill the now with, for example, value of equal to 5. Practical one, instead of 5 could be maybe the average mean or something like that. There are some operations that you might think about, like performing a descriptive analysis. If I would have, for example, to calculate the mean for each column in here, you will get the result. You might want to calculate the mean of 1, and that indicate the axes actually. So I'm calculating the mean by the rows. Every row has its own mean, just like so. Panda can provide us with the various facilities, easily combining together series and data frame. Let's say, for example, I would have a data frame here. The following. Let's go ahead and actually try to create pieces from this that have the data frame, all the rows up to 3rd, 7, and maybe one more value of df2 is going to be, for example, all the value starting from the 7 all to the end of the magic. So you get this list exactly as expected. The first entry of that list, which corresponding to all the rows up to the 3rd, which is this one. And the second entry, this one. The third entry is this one. I'm going to concatenate these pieces into big data frame. Let's run this. Now it's going to concatenate all the values. We can also use something called grouping. I'm going to create a group by A, for example, and then C dcolumn dot the sum. So basically what this group by does is going to group this data frame by the entry of A. Entry of A, that means the values that, or the keys in here, for example, Python, C, and C++, which corresponding to the rows here. And then I'm going to get the sum of the two columns left of the C and the D. These are the C and the D, which contain random variables. I'm going to get their sums. The last few sections, like reshaping. For example, if I would have a tuples which equal to a list that have the zip function, and inside the zip function we have a few lists. Create an index. Panda, calling the function multi-index function from tuples. We're gonna use the tuples that we have just created, and we're gonna call the names on that. This is the first, second one is the second. You get the multi-index returning, this is the A and the D, and then the B and the E, so it's coupling them. Now we are ready with this index to do something more interesting by creating a new data frame. Let's call it 4, which is basically going to be equal to panda, just number of random variables. And then the index will be equal to the index that we have just created, and the columns is just going to be equal to A, B. So the result would be as expected to be. This is the first, and this is the second as an expanded, and correspond to the value AD, which is the first entry of the first list and second entry, and corresponding to the two random variables of A and B, as we have created two columns next to that. So next, maybe we're gonna just close down on two more features called plotting and importing and exporting data using pandas. I'll see you then.